Okay, good evening, everybody. Again, my name is Ayodeji, and for the next 1 hour, I'll be your host, right? And my job is very simple. My job is to get everybody here to talk. Very, very simple. And with me, I have someone who has become a friend, right? Someone who I respect a lot in the industry, Nifemi. Nifemi is the co-host, and Nifemi has a lot of experience in the fintech industry. And our goal today is very simple. Our goal is to discuss, share insights, share our learnings, share our experiences, help people to learn, right? Learn from other people, right? And we're going to be doing this in a very, very casual manner. There is no agenda, there is no key learning outcome, there's nothing about the training format, right? So it's just the hangout, it's just a normal chat. And what we plan to talk about today is a topic which I think, one area rather, which I think is the most, if not the most important, one of the most important in product development, and it is understanding your users. Why is this important? It is because at the end of the day, you're building a product for a particular target market, and you're building that product for them to solve a problem that they have, right? So if you're building the product and you're not solving the problem, then it's a problem. I feel like I'm rhyming now, but you understand me. So, as much as possible, we'll try to um, deep dive into this area. But of course, if by any chance you have any question that is not even related to this area, please feel free. Feel free, right? So again, I would be calling as many of us as possible to talk and add one thing or the other. But please, if by any means you want to say something, right, you want to ask a question, you want to make a contribution, please just raise your hands up and you would have the floor. You would have the floor. Thank you very much, Salem, Kiki, Kialo, Lawrence, Funshaw, everybody. Thanks for joining in. And I will kick off, right? I'll try to get Nifemi to answer one or two questions. And after then, we'll open the floor for everybody to just talk and ask their questions. All right. Nifemi, how are you doing, sir?
Very well, thank you. Good evening, everybody.
Great,
Happy
great,
to be
great.
here.
Yeah, same here, same here, same here, same here. So, understanding your users, right? The U in the UX. I love that title. So what's it all about? Why is it important to understand your users, right? And if possible, I mean, because we want this to be like a real life type of scenario, what can you share with us maybe a time in the past, maybe with one of the products that you built or something, how you were able to use the feedbacks or learnings gotten from the users to improve the product. So let's just start there. And in the same vein, you can do the opposite, right? Maybe a time when you were meant to do that, or you were getting some type of feedback from the users, but you were maybe suffering from a case of product myopia, right? And you were so focused on what you were doing, believing it was the right thing, right? And how you were able to learn from that situation the hard way. So just share for us, and then we can start to take comments and questions from other people. Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot, Deji. I would say first off, I think it's self-explanatory when you say the U, the UX, right? The user is probably the reason why we all have jobs. For those of us in the product or even the design space, right? Because if we're not targeting users, if we're not trying to design an experience for the users, we'll probably be at home doing something else, right? And you'll find that, you know, creating a user experience is something that cuts across multiple disciplines, whether it's a software product, whether it's an FMCG product, whether it's even a service, right? Not even products as we've come to know it. You would find that every point in time you're doing this because of the users. The very important part of being great at what you would end up delivering to users is when you understand them, you know, enough to be able to give them what exactly they need. So to relate to an instance where we were able to, or I was able to leverage off of you know understanding users to have a product differentiation. So this would track back to December 2018 for me, right? When I made a trip to Mina in Niger State, and the goal was We're working on a mobile money platform at the time, slash, we're also piloting like a lending service where we were trying to do like a social equity backed lending product. So we had run a small pilot in Lagos. It worked. We also wanted to be sure that this thing can work in another market. So I had gone to Mina, gone to Kuje market to be precise. So what we were doing was we were approaching the market heads, telling them, we are from XYZ. We want to, give people want to give traders in your market some finance, and they can pay us back, on a daily basis, the way you do like an ajo. So it's almost like a reverse ajo where we give you money up front, improve your stock, and you pay us back every day. We have done it in like 2 markets in Lagos, no problem, everything. So on getting to Mina, first off, from the very beginning, it was slightly different. As opposed to here, where we had Babaloja, Yaloja that were, approaching, it was a bit different. The head of the market was more of a government official type person, not a traditional reporting to the Baile type person, right? So that was feedback one. And by the time we entered the market, started talking to people, because it was in the north, what you would find is, they were predominantly Muslims. And for some of the, very staunch ones, they were like, the moment we mentioned we are giving you credit or loan, it was a no-no for them. They did not want to be associated with that. One even, particularly said, if he takes a loan and for whatever reason he dies before paying back that loan, he won't enter, like that's bad for him, right? And fast forward to a couple of months after, at this time, I'm now working at Carbon, and we're building we have a loan app. What that translated into was that learning experience meant we were then able to do a simple tweak, right? We found that a lot of the guys in the north were not taking loans, right? And we were able to trace it back to this, cultural or religious um, bias. And what we then did was it was a languaging problem, right? So for them, if you give them money, they don't want to see interest because that's what they're not allowed to do. So as opposed to displaying interest, if your GPS location is in the north, right, your UI would not read interest, it will read fee, right? And that only happens if we find that you are located in the north. So this same thing we did at Carbon. I got to fair money a year after, and the same thing was validated because they had also gone the same route because they had gotten, the same learning experience. So what am I trying to say? That was a very simple text tweak that was informed by, a better understanding of your users in a specific demographic. And that meant we were now able to access more people in a specific market. Now, the opposite one. So the opposite one
Yeah.
also happened at Carbon. It also happened at Carbon. As in, when I thought about that thing then in my mind, I was like, no, guy, you be rock star. This thing, their father, the whole payment industry go see say when I don't do something. So what did we do, right? We had registered on Mcash. We had a code on Mcash, and we're like, we're paying a lot to get repayments via cards. Like Paystack would literally build us from the fees that we're paying them every month. And so I was like, let's find a way to reduce this thing. Actually, we have Mcash, looked at Mcash, saw how like this gives us connection to almost all the commercial banks, right? And so what we did was we took Mcash a notch further, as opposed to the default dial star blah 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 star this. First thing I sat down with the engineers. I was like, first off, we collect permission to use phone, right? I said yes. I said great. Now the USSD string for all the banks, they're preset. So what if we just created a button in the app that says pay with bank? And what we are doing at that time is the moment you tap that button, we are dialing the string for you, right? And then whatever should have happened, if you had actually gone outside of the app to dial it, will continue. So you dial the string, you see your bank options, you select, you can now interact with the normal USSD screen. You choose your bank, we pay, everybody is happy. Like it was supposed to be brilliant. But guess what? There was plenty of work that I forgot to do because it was after we went live that we discovered that for some banks on Mcash, and I'm not shitting you guys, their
Yeah.
transaction limit, one bank, the transaction limit was 999 naira.
Wow.
I'll
Like
not call their,
below 8,000 naira.
yeah, I will not call their name on this
Are you
call.
sure it's
The
not
highest we could do,
$999?
naira, bro.
Wow.
In
Wow.
fact, the highest we could do with any bank was, I think, 20,000 naira. So apparently, the transaction limit had been pegged from NIBS, but that was a detail that they omitted when we were, wrapping up the integration. It was now when customers started complaining that this thing is not working for their bank or for their bank, they can't do more than this. I now started compiling a list, and you would find that across, I think, about 18 or 19 banks that were live on
Yeah.
Mcash at the time, maybe only three of them could actually process 20K full. That's the 20K that was the upper limit. So it was supposed to be this great thing that everybody was like, it's now live. We had to shut it down. Like the UX was terrible. So from trying to solve a problem of helping users, repay their loans easier, we just created a customer service nightmare. And I was like,
Wow.
if only I had just gone further and said, guys, can we have the limits for all the banks? It would have saved us
Yeah.
a lot of development time that went into creating that feature. So yeah.
Hmm. Interesting. Interesting. I mean, so it's I don't know, should I say refreshing to see that I mean how you're able to learn, right? Because at the end of the day, you either learn the easy way or the hard way, right? Sometimes it's good to learn the hard way because I have my own stories too. I have my own stories too. But I mean at this
I think
moment,
it would be nice for us to hear your own story.
oh yeah, yeah. I mean, of course, I'll definitely share. I'll definitely see. There was a time in my life where I was leading a product team, and my CEO was this very, very creative person. This guy was a thinker. Every Monday morning, right, we had a new idea that we're going to channels, right, that we're going to take to market and all the no joke. So every single Monday morning. So once it's Monday meeting, it's time to hear, right? And then it was more like a one-man business. So what he says, right, is kind of final. Like there was a time when I literally like had an open quarrel with him in front of everyone. I was like, no, that you cannot keep doing this, right? You can't keep getting your team right to build products or solutions because of how you feel, because maybe you went out with your friend over the weekend and then you had this eureka moment, right? Meanwhile, this product that you're building it for, you're not even our ideal type of user. So we end up spending ad funds, right? Expending man hours to build something, and then it can't even leave our office, right? Like we can't launch it into the market. And this continued for a while, because we're not testing the product, we're not identifying if this product we're even building has a market, if this product solves a real life problem for people. Even if in some cases the product solves a problem for people, what is the addressable market? Right, because you don't want to build a product that solves a problem for maybe just 1,000 people, right? How are you going to monetize it? How is it going to be profitable? You understand all those types of things. So we're just building products. So we became like this innovation lab, this mini innovation lab, right, with a lot of ideas, with just a limited pockets, right? So we'll build a lot of those ideas, and then those products will just sit on the developers' laptop, right, and it wouldn't live there. And this continued for like a year, right? Until we just had to learn the idea. And we're like, you know what? We can't continue doing it like this, right? So henceforth, at least before I left there, for the last main project I worked on before I left there, we took our time, right? Did like a couple of pilot testing sessions with users, did a couple of user surveys, interviews, even some sort of usability testing, just to ensure that, you know what, people at least need this product, they need this solution, right? And we began to see some improvements afterwards. And the other way around, very quickly, so that we can allow people to give their contributions. Please, at this point, please, if you have something to share, or if you have maybe an idea, right, something we could have done that could have helped us to handle the situation better, or even if you have a question, please feel free, raise your hands up, right, and just contribute. I'm hoping that this will be the last time I'll speak for the rest of the session. But let me just quickly give my example. Currently, my team is currently working on a product. It's a it's a marketplace, right, which aggregates users who people who are in the need of deals, right? So they can afford it, but they don't mind getting a deal, or they can't afford it, right? So they're looking out for a deal to be able to afford it, or take advantage of that service. So you have those users on one side, and then you have vendors, right, or retailers on the other side, who are willing to give out this sort of deals. And so we'll just build a marketplace to aggregate all those types of those two parties together. And we recently launched soft launch, by the way. So I don't think anybody would have heard about it. It was intentional. That is our strategy to go to the market. Soft launch, right? And we noticed that so we had a category, right, called beauty and spa. Before we launched, right, our hypothesis was that category was going to be our highest crossing category, because even before launch, the platform was live, so we're getting some traffic, right? Before launch, the traffic on beauty and spa was the highest, right? And the time spent on the platform in the beauty and spa category was also the highest. But after we launched, we realized that the traffic for professional services, this is another category, became higher than beauty and spa, but the drop-off was a lot, right? And then when we dug deeper, we now discovered that, that the reason why the drop-off was a lot, or is a lot, is because we do not have as many professional services as we had on beauty and spa, because we took our time and we focused on populating beauty and spa with a lot of services, with a lot of partners, right? Meanwhile, professional services just had just a few. You get. So because people could not see what they wanted, so they were interested in professional services, but they couldn't see what they wanted, right? So when they got in, right, they would leave, they would drop off, right? So what did that tell us? That told us that, oh, you know what, you guys need to ramp up on the professional services category, because a lot of people are interested. So you need to give them the options they are looking for, right? And that is something that I learned this week, by understanding the users and looking at what the users are saying. So please, comments, questions. I have Salem in here. I know Salem knows that I'm going to call him, right? So Salem, I mean, what can you tell us from your experience, right? Maybe a scenario or a time when you've had to learn the easy or the hard way from the users. Anything you can share? Hi, Salem, you're on mute, just in case you're trying to speak.
Oh, he said he's driving. He just left a message.
Oh, he's driving. Okay. No problem. When you're done. All right. So, anybody with a question, anybody with a comments, please feel free and ask. And it doesn't have to be related to understanding the users, right? Anything whatsoever. Anything around product management, anywhere, right? And even if it's outside product management, I'm sure someone here would have some type of answer to that question. So while we're waiting for the questions to come in, you can either raise your hands up or just unmute yourself to speak, right? Just feel free. Okay, so while we're waiting for those questions to come in, so Nifemi, while of course, on this, attempting to understand the users, right, and picking, giving attention to the U in the UX, right. So I would like to know what type of metrics, right, or learnings will be best to help make a more informed decision, right, while taking a look at the users? What type of metrics should we look out for, right? And what kind of success can those metrics lead us to?
That's an interesting one, right? And I think first things first will be even picking back off the experience that you shared, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes it can be as simple as drop-offs, right? Because for me, drop-offs are usually like a huge indicator of something has gone wrong. It's literally, you've buttered me up to a point as a user. I'm interested, I've gotten here, but I got there and I did not pass there. Something must have happened. Either you made it too difficult for me to pass, or I got there and I did not find what I was interested in. But both of these options, right, still tied to, that specific feature or service not fulfilling the user's needs. So again, I'll use the lending space as an example. When I was at Fairmoney, for instance, my major assignment was getting customers through the door and getting them up to the point where they apply for a loan and take a loan. But it would be interesting for you to know that I had a dashboard that showed me drop-offs between download and getting the loan. There were about 12 or 13 different drop-off points that we had identified. And so for me, it was assuming everybody was 100%. I'm now seeing how many people are left by the time they take a loan. So imagine, for the purpose of this conversation, imagine 100 people are getting into the funnel, and by the time it's time to take a loan, you are only seeing maybe 20.
Right, I can imagine.
And then you now start to break down each drop-off point and see, okay, what could we have done differently here? For instance, point one is the guy could download the app. Part of the onboarding process is, get an SMS OTP sent to the phone number tied to your BVN. That one is a constant source of headache, right? And because, BVN was at the center of user onboarding, and again, in the fintech space, you understand why that was almost compulsory. We then had to start optimizing for, or thinking of how to optimize for that, because the issues that could go wrong, the simplest one, easiest to fix one is, your SMS provider is going bonkers. So maybe that's the FOB decided to do something, or Trello is updating their server, and they are the ones that are messing up. Another day, it could be, there was an error of ported lines, Vanso. God. So it could have been that, right? Maybe the user is using a ported line, but thankfully, I think that one is usually not an issue anymore. It could even be that, the phone number that is tied to the guy's BVN is no more active, or the guy doesn't have it again. So we keep sending OTP to a phone number that the guy doesn't have, right? And for us, the question was now a mix of, can we solve that problem, or can we, change the part of the journey where that requirement comes in? So for instance, I'm working on a product now, and for this particular reason, I'm saying, I'm doing your phone number validation much later in the flow, when I've captured your name, your full name, your everything, so that if phone number becomes the issue, I can still look for a way to convert you, maybe with your email, and tell you that, oh yeah, okay, update your phone number, right? Just so that this doesn't become a problem. Another thing is, even the BVN itself at some point became an issue. Drop off. Another drop off is even as simple as, you click on apply, we do the whole data score, credit scoring, risk assessment, and then you came to collect 100K, we are giving you 10,000 naira. And that alone was a mega drop off reason, right? I think, in fact, one of the things that we did was every time a user rejects, now, not when we reject the user, but when a user rejects the offer that we give them, we now have like a small survey, a inline page that we had there that, oh, you rejected the loan offer. Can you tell us why? So we had sort of identified some of the top reasons before. So we had like 4 check boxes and
Yeah.
then one other field in case an other field in case it was something else. So, why did you reject the loan? So reasons from like the offer was too small, the interest rate was too high, I did not find the repayment period I was looking for, things like that, right? And then
Yeah.
we can then go back to say, what is the topmost reason users that we give loan offers are rejecting? Because first off, there are people that we are not giving that are not happy. Again, that's a different segment. But the ones that we are saying, oh yeah, take, why are they not taking? And for instance, things like that now informed a feature like loan top up, a feature like weekly repayment as opposed to monthly repayments, because you find that some people would rather pay back their loans on a weekly basis. Some people will tell you they don't even want a timed repayment. At the end of 3 months, they are happy to just carry your lump sum and give you. And
Yeah.
then we now take this back and sit down with risk that, okay, this is what the users are saying. Which of these ones can we do that we will not have to close shop and things like that? So yeah, I see questions that started dropping. So I would
Yes, yeah. So we can start to address them. But also, I mean, if anybody has maybe an idea of maybe an answer to the question or comments, thanks Adiola for sending your question. You can send your question through the chat, or preferably you can even ask them directly to make it more interactive. But yes, Nifemi, please go on.
Okay, I was actually hoping to put somebody on the spot here because I can see a designer that I know on the spot. And it's
Please, by
always
all means,
interesting to get
gladly
it's
put me
always
on the spot.
interesting to get the perspective of designers when it comes to UX. UX is
Please.
largely their thing these days, right?
Yep,
And
yep.
so you would find that designers who work well with PMs, they are usually like they are a delight. So
Oh yes.
Terry, if you don't mind, I'm putting you on the spot. Would you like to
Terry, thank
contribute
you.
to the
Good evening, everyone.
conversation?
Good evening, Terry. Good evening, Terry. Thank you very much.
Nifemi.
Hmm.
I totally wasn't expecting this, and honestly, okay. So I've been listening in, but I won't lie, I'm kind of a little bit distracted in a way. But there were some few things I heard that got me quite excited. The What Nifemi said about finding out from your demographic, right?
Yeah.
What, as in how they act or how they respond to certain kind of um, questions or things you want to find out from them, right?
Yeah.
And from what he said, it was like just a simple text change was what they needed to be able to at least get some kind of responses and even get those users from those areas to be able to use the app, right?
Yeah.
And I think he also talked about the other one he did with after doing a lot of work on on the on the app, I think for fair money,
Yeah.
just then realizing that it's not something that can even be done because of some other issues with the banks, right? With their limits. So I think as a user, I think sorry, as a designer, one of the biggest challenges that I think I've had with regards to experience is majorly around the limitations that the industry presents most of the time.
Yeah.
As in that's that limitation alone is a very frustrating factor, because when you work with PMs and you've looked at the scope, you've looked at everything, and you're presenting a very simple way to get a particular task done, and let's say that thing requires that just this information is needed, and then the PM is saying no, in this industry this thing is required, especially that BVN issue. I for one have been in many situations where I decided not to use a particular banking app because of the fact that that same BVN issue.
Right.
And it's very funny that the same response I get from almost everybody I complain to about the BVN issue is that go to your bank and change your phone number. And when you go to your bank, they change your phone number. They do it and they tell you it's done, only to come back and realize that the apps are still sending SMS to that same old number.
So that one, I think I have an answer. I think I have an answer to that one, because I think I'm one of the people that are guilty of still sending OTP to the old one. The truth is, the cost of retrieving BVN data is coming out from the business's bottom line. So most times then we were caching a lot of the data we were receiving, right? So if I already have your BVN, this was the number tied to it. More often than not, OTPs will still be sent to the same number. So even after you've changed, except you tell us that we have changed it and we now do a fresh query for your phone or for your BVN, you see that same phone number that.
Okay, so
get the OTP.
Yeah, so Nifemi, so quickly, Terry, before we allow you slide back into mute, right? So before we answer Adeola's question, so as a UX designer, right, you're not just designing the interfaces, you're also designing the experience. So even beyond the PRD, user stories, flowcharts, and whatever the product team or product manager might give you, right? I'm sure somehow you still do your own validation, right? I mean, of course, trying to build things using an human-centered design approach. So just share with us, how do you validate that this experience you're building, right, is going to be attractive to the users you're building it for, and is going to solve their problem? What ways do you do that?
Okay. Usually, most times I'm not involved in the process of actually doing market research or trying to find out exactly what the user wants. Most times the PMs and the UX researchers and all of those people around within the product team, right, go about doing that. So most times when they share those data and information with me and saying that this is what the user wants, or this is what you found that the user would prefer, right? A lot of the times, I realize something, that the information that they sometimes present back is sometimes they get those information from a particular kind of users, right? Which the argument in most cases is that these are our typical users, right? But the way I prefer to design is that I prefer to design knowing that if there's anything I'm designing, right, and that thing trying to design it using a human-centered approach. Sorry, forgive the way I'm speaking.
It's okay.
A human-centered approach, right? I make sure that first of all, right, that thing that I'm designing, even if it works for me.
Right. Okay.
Right, and because in most cases the things I design for are things that I would want to use.
I see.
I realized that if it's not something I want to use as a designer, I don't put in as much energy as I'll put in when it's something I want to use.
Right. Okay, but how about if you're not the typical target market for that product? How about if maybe you're building a product for the elderly members of the population, for instance? Of course, you're not 70 yet. So how do you immerse yourself? Because what you're telling
That
me is you
immense.
tend to immerse
You
yourself.
just said it. You just said it. You have
Yeah.
to put yourself as a designer in that particular user's mind. And the way you do this is truly looking at the kind of users, probably even speaking to them yourself if you can, right? And one thing I would say to designer is that most times when they do these interviews or usability tests and all of those things that involves users, right? And a physical use, as in physically, try and be involved in that, because you would find a lot of insight from just watching those people use what you design, even if it's just one feature and that particular feature you've designed it out and is not yet built or something, right? But one thing I realize in Nigeria here is that we don't do a lot of that,
Right.
actually, and we base a lot of our processes on assumptions, right? And obviously conventions and standards that are out there, right? That will feel this is how these people do it, this is how these people do it, so it should work.
Right.
But most times I've been in a situation whereby I designed a particular flow. It had about 1, 2, 3, I think 4 steps from something that was usually around about 7 to 8 steps, only for me to go to the give it to the head of the design at that time, and we decided to go and do like just give it to someone that we know that would love to do the thing, to actually even try it out, only for the person to now get confused at the third step, because yes, we've reduced it, but it didn't feel natural. Like they would have preferred if it even had an extra step just to make it easier. Right. So so sometimes, and you just really need to at least put yourself in that mind of the users that you are basically designing for. At least I would, for an elderly person, going back to your initial question, I would definitely be in that state tomorrow when I would want to use something like this. So try and always put yourself in the mind of that person when you're designing for. Have that in your mind when you're designing. I think that's
Right. Interesting. Thank you very much, Terry. Once again, reminder, if you have any question relating to product development, product management, or product strategy in any way, it doesn't even have to be about the users. Please trust me, this is the place to ask that question. Okay, so Shegun, I can see your hands up. Just give me a minute. Let us answer Adeola's question and then we'll come to you. So Nifemi, let me read the question, right, to Nifemi and to everybody else who might have an answer. So Adeola is asking, what do you do when all the features you launched for a product doesn't work perfectly as it was before you launch? Are you sure it's not your village trip, Adeola? Anyway, okay, seriously. And this product is what users or customers have looked forward to, leaving the users disappointed. How do you try not to lose a lot of users? So Adeola, just to clarify, so if not working perfectly, is it a technology issue? Like, is it something that has to do with bugs, or is it that the users are not adopting it? I don't know if you can just unmute and confirm for us. Hi, Adiola. Are you there? Okay, Adiola prefers typing. Oh, tech issue, typical. So Nifemi, what do you think? So this person, I mean, users have been waiting for the product. Like this product is the next thing, next best thing after sliced bread, and then the product is launched, and all of a sudden, the product is not functioning well. I think every product
And
designer must have experienced this one way or the other. So I expect a lot of people to also contribute, honestly. So Nifemi, please go ahead.
I think it's the classic case of what you ordered versus what you got
I'm
to.
telling you. I
And
tell
I
you.
think at some point in the journey, right, it almost always happens. But I think there are there are some things that would have happened before this, right? So for instance, I had to learn at some point in my life that if it's a mobile app related product, for instance, on the Play Store, you can stagger release. So you can launch a new feature and only, push it out to say 5% of your users. And
Yeah.
then you start to get the behavior or the reaction of those 5%. And it sort of helps you to, what's it called? It sort of helps you to be able to iterate quickly. So if you release to only 5% and you see that there's issue, you can quickly do a rollback, fix the issue before launching and iterating in similar manner. But if you are the kind of person that will go and do full rollout, ah, all the best too. Because sometimes these things just happen. Another thing is, how exactly is your end-to-end software development process? Was this something that QA did not catch? Was this something that did somebody say it was done when it was not done? Because as the PM or whatever role that you play beforehand, everybody has defined what done means, right? When it's done,
Yeah.
done. So somebody cannot come and tell you that it's done, and users test it and we saw that it's undone. So
Right.
yeah, I think it's important to first address what exactly went wrong on the user side. Come on, how not to lose those users with the grace of God,
I
especially if you are in the market, especially when you're in the market when the users have alternatives, it would
yeah.
definitely cost you a lot more to get those guys back. So, and that's why we invest a lot of patience and process sometimes into the development process, just
Mhm.
so that we don't have to do rinse and repeat. Because whatever it is that happened in this case, it means you guys are going back to the drawing board to fix the problem, and you've added an extra problem of now reconvincing the disappointed users.
Trust me, I think you just hit the nail on the head, right? Because sometimes it's better to just release gradually, like go into the market gradually, because it is less costly to make a mistake when you have 100 users than when you have 10,000 users. You understand? It costs you more at that stage. So it's always a very good thing to build your MVP as simple as possible, right? Give them just enough to keep them engaged, right? Quickly go to the market to test if they would even love this idea, right? And then based on what you get, based on the feedback, you then start to expand and release the rest of the features of the proposition. There would always be pressure from management to release everything, do this, do that. Trust me, as much as you can, try to push back, because if things go south, you're the one they will call you. You're the product manager, you're the CEO of the product. They will blame it on you, right? And also the technology. I mean, things as very simple as, was proper regression testing done before release? All those types of things, they mean a lot, right? And also the quality of your team, right? How good are your people? How good is your solutions architect if you have one? How good is your developer, right? I've worked with developers who they're the ones who are even telling me what to do, right? And a lot of things that I would have had to tell them, right? They already implemented without me knowing, right? So they understand the experience, they know what they're meant to do. Basically, just make the job easier for you. So always look out for that, right? So Adiola, I hope we'll be able to shed some light, right? So for this product, yes, my advice would be hold on where you are, right? And try to fix it, try to iterate, right? And all those types of things. There are extreme situations where you literally have to just rebuild from the scratch, right? Hopefully this is not one, right? But I think the most important learning you get from this is for the future, for the future. Thank you very much. Okay, so Mr. Ario, thanks for being patient with us. So please, you can unmute and ask your question. So Nifemi, Salem has a question for you. What is the top one large user problem gap in Nigerian fintech? I think I'll increase that to 3, right? So Nifemi, what are the top 3 user problems, gaps in the fintech industry in Nigeria? So that's a question for you from myself and Salem.
I'm trying to streamline it, right? So because fintech as a whole cuts across multiple verticals, it's hard to sort of what's the word? It's sort of hard to. So first off, I think one peculiar problem would probably start from onboarding, right?
Yeah.
Onboarding is a huge pain in the ass. If you also look at it from another angle, you could say there is regulatory issues, right? And then third would be user education generally, because a huge demographic in the fintech space is trying to bank the unbanked, the whole financial inclusion agenda. But a major problem that specific segment that is supposed to be the biggest chunk of the pie has is an education problem. It may not necessarily be, classroom education. It could be more of, financial literacy or even digital literacy, where they're not very familiar with digital products. So it could be as simple as, language barrier in some cases. Again, you would find people share experiences when they went to serve in some places in the north or some places in the east, or even further down southwest, and you find that toppers have to be teaching in the local language of the places where they are serving, because a lot of the students there cannot speak English. So I would say that top 3 for me would be onboarding and regulation and user education.
Interesting. So speaking to onboarding, right? So can you share maybe like an actual story or scenario where you were able to find out? Because I mean, since you mentioned onboarding, I'm guessing you've experienced it, right, in the past. Was there a particular situation when that you were able to find out that there was an onboarding issue, and how were you able to find it out?
Well, so onboarding issues sort of, again, I'll go back to the example I shared before, right? Where we had, because of the whole digital onboarding thing, a lot of fintechs had to rely on BVN. And you will find that, for whatever reason, the only reason why we needed BVN was because we wanted to onboard these users from an existing repository. BVN was supposed to be the trusted, validated data from all the banks, right? And so the expectation is that if a user has BVN data, we can verify that user and onboarding can start. But again, more recently, the central bank in all their wisdom, I mean, NIBS in all their wisdom in collaboration with their collaborators, has said fintechs cannot access, BVN data like we used to. What has now happened is, at best, you can get a Boolean for BVN. So you are checking whether it's valid or not, or if it's true or false. Meaning, if somebody brings your BVN, all I can say is that it's a valid BVN. I can't say whether it's a BVN anymore. Unlike before, where we were getting, in fact, a lot of onboarding activities were tied around that service. So I'm checking your first name, last name on your BVN. I'm validating that with, your first name, last name that you've provided while you're trying to onboard. I'm checking the phone number against the phone number. In fact, I think we had done one integration where we were doing a face match, your selfie against the picture that you have on your BVN. So a lot of, seemingly secure and tight-knit onboarding process was built around BVN. And then regulation, which is problem number two, came and knocked the wind off of ourselves. And again, still dwelling on the BVN example, you will still find people today that the moment you're trying to onboard them on an app and you ask them for BVN, that's their drop-off point. Like they've gone.
True. Very true.
Salem. Salem just brought another question.
Salem has lots of questions. So quickly, okay, so we have Mr. Ariel's question, we have Salem's question. And then, okay, yeah, Terence was just confirming that BVN is still a problem for him. Same here. And Alex is asking, can we connect with the presenters privately? Definitely. I'll drop my social media handles on the chat page shortly. But Salem is rolling in the question. Salem, please, as soon as you can, unmute so that I can ask you my question. I have a question for you too. Okay, but Nifemi, so let me read Salem's follow-up question. Are there any language-specific products per the education problem, since most users learn best in natural languages? And has it been tested yet? So basically, speaking around user education, is it particular to any specific, any language-specific products, right? Yeah.
So I would say language-specific products is not something that we've started to do a lot in Nigeria, right? But what I would say is a lot of businesses in the financial inclusion space, let me just call it that, right?
Yeah.
Are solving that problem with local agency models, right? So when they're trying to activate agents or onboard agents on their platform that are supposed to help the users in those spaces, they are onboarding people in that environment, right? So that these guys are the ones that they are investing in on an education standpoint. So you can have like agents in Nasarawa, and you bring them together, you teach them how to use your solution, and then they are the ones that now provide service to the other guys who onboard some of them to become your customers, create Momo accounts for them if you want to issue cards and things like that. So it's almost like creating a semi-manual process to solve a manual problem. Because if you were to go end to end, if the issue is not being able to read, right? Some of them can't even read their local language, right? If we check on this call, the Yoruba speaking people, if you put Yoruba in front of them, it will be hard to read. You'll now be hearing the Yoruba will almost sound like it was a Russian person speaking the thing, because they'll be reading it with a lot of struggle. And it's the same thing for even the not so literate people, because reading local language is even some form of literacy in itself.
Right.
So you would find that I think the only guys that have really cracked that, in my opinion, are the telcos. When you dial a code and you say, "Fun Yoruba, Okan."
Yes.
I also press BU. Igbo too. They will say it's press whatever tree is in Igbo, and then you find that you can have your own IVR tailored towards your local language, and they go a step further, right? If you are one of those people that have gone that option, you would find that more often than not, if you then have to speak to a customer service agent, you are speaking to an agent that can communicate to you, not just in English, but in that local language that led you through that channel. So I would say the closest to solving that problem would be the telcos, right? Not fintech proper. Most fintechs have just gone the route of agents that can speak local languages.
Interesting. So Terry just dropped a comment. Reading is actually harder than listening. So anyway, I hope you've taken time out to read the question addressed to you, by the way. So Terry, I'll be calling on you now. But yeah, Nifemi, thank you very much. I mean, Salem likes the response. So Terry, Mr. Aria's question was actually to you. right? So he had issues with his BVN. I mean, that's speaking about your phone number. I went to the bank to change it, but still getting the same issue. As a UX designer, do you have any alternative solutions to that? Nifemi cited data caching as an issue. So who is caching this data, the tech companies or the API providers? How can tech companies or API providers detect that this issue exists, and how can they solve it? Terry, this question is for you.
Actually, when this question was directed at Nifemi, I think he would answer this properly. But let me try and give my response. Okay,
Yeah.
so the problem, it's as Nifemi indicated, is caching, which I also observed, is that they would even show me that this is the number they sent it to. Sometimes they won't show me, and I don't just get the OTP or whatever form of. Usually it's OTP. Yeah, it's only OTP anyway. Okay,
Yeah.
so I would say it's the tech companies that are probably catching it, right? But as I said, right, another challenge that I also had is that even when I onboard with new, because I'm still having it now, even when I onboard with new apps that are requesting for BVN, they still tell me or send OTP to that old number, which means the problem at the core is not really the caching, but the fact that the BVN or whatever link the banks have with BVN do not actually change the phone number in some cases, or do not do the BVN changes in some cases. So from my own experience, I've gone to I think about 3 different banks, including the one that I did the BVN, created the BVN in the first place, right? And they all told me they've updated it. At least one told me to go back to to where I did it. So for me, I think it's the link the BVN, the banks have with the BVN providers that is not actually updating the BVN information, right? So which is why the new apps that I do register with still send information to the old one, right? In terms, for me, thinking of another way to go about this, I would like to ask Nifemi a particular question, right? The value of BVN, as you noted, is to have a central source of truth for the information that the users or your users provide, right?
Yeah, largely because it's supposed to be a verified data. Um, it's supposed to be a verified data source one, and so far so good. It has appeared to be the most central, if I can put it that way. So you find that some people don't have driver's license, some have driver's license, they don't have passport, some have passport, they don't have NIN, some have NIN, they don't have voter's card. But you would usually find that all those people that have one don't have the other, they have BVN because they have a bank account, right? And so BVN became the go-to guy, right? But right now, the government is trying to push NIN as the de facto guy. Let's see how that works out.
So for me, in terms of finding another way out of this, because we as businesses or as tech companies, we do need to verify the users that use us, especially in the fintech or in the fintech space. Yeah. So if the problem is coming from the BVN providers with their APIs and the banks not being able to change information, in a way, our hands are tied. All right, except we decide not to use BVN and opt for another entirely new way of doing verification. That is because I still believe NIN will probably still face the same challenges. And for me, I think the major issue is is the people providing it, right? What I would like is some kind of way whereby the tech companies, right, can probably all come together and create something similar, something reliable, because in a lot of ways, BVN isn't very reliable, at least in the tech space. I think that would be.
So my simple feedback to that is I think it's too stressful and painful a task for tech companies to pick on. And the annoying thing is, if you eventually do it and get it right, it just requires Uncle Murphy to come and say one thing, and everything that you have been working on is thanks for coming. So what I would say is two things. Is either the government agencies step up big time to the realities of today, or they bring us into the game where we can work hand in hand and make some of these things work. It's not rocket science, right? This thing that you said, and it even reminded me of some of the issues we have with credit bureaus, right? When you are calling for somebody's credit information, guess what? The person probably took a loan from Rent Money yesterday, but because Rent Money has reported, those ones have not updated. If you call for their credit reports today, it's not there. You have given this person money. By next month, you now see that this guy took loan just the day before you disbursed to him, and somebody is coming back to ask you that, didn't you see it? The answer is no, you didn't see it because the credit report didn't show you. That's when you now find out that they take between 15 to 30 days to update credit information that you are getting access to via API. So some of these things run deeper than just trying to solve the problem in one agency, right? Because you would find that I think the summary is there are a lot of legacy systems, and at this point you can only hope and pray that their time has passed. If you agree that their time has passed, let's come and help them do it.
Yeah. I mean, thank you very much. Oh, sorry, Terry, you still want to say something?
Sir, I think I was just trying to affirm what Nifemi said. We're just hoping they agree that their time has passed and allow things to be done a little bit differently. Because okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Terry, and thanks, Nifemi. Mr. Rio, I hope we were able to answer your question at least as much as possible. So our time is fast spent. Now. So for anyone willing to connect, please, you can see my email and Twitter handle on the public chat page. Please feel free to drop yours too, and feel free to send a direct message to us. Right now, our sessions are for 1 hour, so we're past the allotted time. But I'd like to thank everybody for joining in today. We usually use Twitter for these sessions, but Nigerian government now. This is part of what Terry and Nifemi were just talking about now. But it's all good. We'll always find a way to make it happen. Before we leave, we can take one more question from anybody, final question, and would leave. Adeola is dropping a question. This question, okay, so I think we'll take Adeola's question as the last one. Bani wants the recording. Favor, how can we make the recording available to Bani? I think we're going to upload it on YouTube, right? Hi, Favor. By tomorrow. Great. Bani, that answers your question. So it will be live on YouTube tomorrow. So please feel free to tune in and listen again. So this is Product Hangout with myself, and we do this once a month, right? Usually on the last Saturdays, all Sundays of the month, right? But you'd always get the notification up front. The next one will be in a month's time, and we'll be talking on we usually run polls, and the topic with the highest poll and we get to speak about it, right? And we get to bring different persons to just come share their ideas and all. So we'll be at this again next month, last Saturday of the month. But for now, we'll be exiting in the next 3 minutes, just after we've answered Adeola's question. So I'm going to read Adeola's question, and anybody who wants to chime in, please feel free to unmute, answer, or you can even drop an answer that you have on the group chat. So this question is unrelated to you in the UX. Cool. It's been quite difficult for someone just going into the product management field to get interesting internships or entry-level jobs. Please, why is that? And if there are possible opportunities to tap from, I don't mind anyone sharing. Adela, please send me a DM on LinkedIn. My name is DejiFash on LinkedIn. So search for me, send me a DM, and let's talk. And you can also do that to send Nifemi a DM or send maybe Salem a DM. So Salem, you can drop your name in the group chat, right? I totally understand where you're coming from, right? And the truth is just that Nigeria is a little bit behind in the field of product management, right? A lot of the organizations that need the product manager skill don't even see a need for it. And some of those who even hire product managers are just doing so because other companies are hiring. You understand? So, as a product manager, you're going to have to do the extra work to find a niche for yourself, right? So what I'll suggest is a combination of academic knowledge, right? You can sign up to TREFL courses. Favor, please, you can drop the details of the bootcamp that is happening next month, right? So you do that on one side, and on the other side, taking your time out to get involved in maybe side gigs or passion projects, right? Like what you've done is actually the right way to go, asking for anybody who can connect you to maybe some opportunities, right? Because at the end of the day, the opportunity would always come, right? But are you prepared for that opportunity? Because people, even if you're an entry-level product manager, most times they still want to see that, you have a passion for it, you've gained some type of knowledge in that area, or you're doing one side project or something, right, that has given you core real life experience in that area. So it's always good to prepare yourself, because the opportunity, I tell you, it will definitely come. But because we have to exit now, let's chat, send me a message on LinkedIn, and then we can see what we can do about that. Okay, the comments are coming in now. Vibon is asking, as a PM, how do you ensure developers give you a valid estimate, especially if you're not tech inclined? Plus, how do you manage stakeholder expectations? Okay, this will definitely be the last question we'll take, and I'll call on no other person but Nifemi to help answer this last question before we close. Nifemi, can you help with Vibon's question?
Yeah, I actually sent a message to say you should hit me up because I think it's an issue that I can very well relate with, right? And there's really no right and wrong answer, because I've been on two sides, right? Side one is I go and meet a dev. I'm like, okay, we want to do this. How long will it take? The dev looks at it. I look at the sharpest guy on the team that I know that this one's sabi. The guy can tell me, this one is 2 days work. By the time it gets to engineering manager is saying that it's 4 or 5 days work. And I'm like, but your guy said it's 2 days work. He's like, no. And then, he comes from the angle of, yes, he can finish writing his code in 2 days. But after he finishes writing, it will go through code review. After code review, they'll test. If there's issue, they'll push it back. He will have to resolve, bring it back. So before it is actually ready, it may take 4 or 5 days, right? And, when he breaks it down like that, it sort of makes sense. So the conversation is a lot deeper than, estimation. And one of the things that I've now found is involving your engineering lead early on. So, in fact, my de facto PRD template right now has a portion called technical t-shirt sizing, where after we've written all the specs and everything, me and tech lead will now sit down, break the process down. Okay, what are we looking to do? How are we looking to achieve? And then at that point, he then comes back to give me a head quote now, a t-shirt sizing estimate of the complexity of the project. So if, we have, very small, small, medium, large, very large. And so we've sort of created notes for what each of these sizes are. So very small is maybe half of a sprint. Small is one sprint. Medium is at least two sprints. Large is maybe 3 to 4 sprints, and very large is maybe like a 3 month project, right? And so once he has given me that idea, it helps me to then go back and look at my backlog, plan very well that okay, if this one is going to take us one sprint, what is the impact we are getting out of it? How does the impact tie to my overall OKR? Will I sacrifice this one for a bigger 3 month project that would hit the ground running, and I'll kill my 1 year OKR in month 6? So at the end of the day, there is now all of that, which helps you to manage your stakeholders better, because you are going back to tell them that, this one would take us approximately this. This is what we get out of it. And then you're pushing your recommendation, even though you know that to a large extent, your stakeholders have a huge part to play in deciding what happens at the end of the day. So yeah, to a large extent, that's my answer to that question. But yeah, Vebron, hit me up. Let's talk.
All right. Thank you very much, Vibron. Please, if Nifemi up, I hope I was able to shed some light at least. We're going to end now, but the last thing we'll do before we end is we'll give out a 50% scholarship on the next Trefraud Product Management Bootcamp.